Hey guys and gals, welcome to Miyagi Mornings episode 39, something like that, right? Anyway, today, what are we going to talk about? This goes from my post yesterday on MeWe, and there was a ton of stuff that came in for ideas for Miyagi Mornings. And one was, what's brewing? And this is the time of year that the individual in question is making stuff, and I'll tell you a little bit about things I like to make. Um, as we do this video, so I'll answer that question as well. But I'm really going to talk more about the entire concept of small batch mead, wine, and cider making. And my favorite out of all of those is mead. And as you'll hear today, there's some reasons for that as far as production capacity when doing small batch. So I want to start out with the fact that I do have a small batch method of mead and wine and cider making. Originally, it came to me from a gentleman named Michael Jordan, who's still on my expert council. He's known as the Bee Whisperer, but I've modified it actually quite a bit. I think that the method I use is vastly improved, and explaining it in a short video like this is not really practical. So in the video notes, I have for you a playlist called Meads of the Week that I did for about 5 weeks. It starts out with exactly how to make mead. I've even modified that method a little bit since then. I'll tell you some stuff on that, but I'm going to give you 3 podcasts that I've done on the subject that give you basically more information you would ever need to be able to make these small batch things. I also want to start a little bit about why I'm talking about this today beyond just, hey, it's a cool thing to do. It is an agorist opportunity. Now, of course, it's illegal for you to be in the business of making and producing alcohol without a license for resale. But I'm just going to say that there are ways to circumnavigate that little issue. And, if you give somebody some of your homemade stuff, it's completely kosher to do that as a gift. And if they happen to give you a gift that's not actually related to it, then that is what it is. And what this makes me think of is the master winemaker from my history is a gentleman named Buddy Shoemaker. I grew up about 500 yards south of where he lived. And I'm sure he's passed on by now, but he was one of the most popular people in the whole damn county. And he's literally like he is. If you've ever heard the song "Dust on the Bottle" and hear Cleo Wilson in there's a guy that he goes to see to find the wine. He was that dude, man, and he had his little thing going, and the way he did it, he let you bring him stuff to make wine out of. So I would take grapes from my grandfather's 75-year-old grapevines up to him every year, and my grandfather would get a bunch of wine. He'd just keep some of it. No, there's always a way. And I'll tell you, that dude had some social capital. There is no way that man ever wanted for anything in his life, even though he did not have a ton of money. I mean, if he had never needed anything, somebody would have helped him. And if you needed something, and Buddy was your friend, with a phone call, you got the help you needed. There's a lot of value in that. So that's one thing. The next thing is avoiding taxes. I am not a fan of government. Many of y'all know that. I'm not political. I'm anti-political. I don't participate in the ass clown circus. Y'all call it voting. But I don't believe that it's right for the state to take my money. And the truth is, when you go down to the store and you buy yourself a nice bottle of wine or mead or cider or beer or distilled spirits, which you can also make even though you're not supposed to. Just saying, people do it. A tremendous amount of what you're spending is in taxes that go to the state. And when you make your own, you circumvent that taxation system. By the way, that's completely legal as well, as long as you're making alcohol that's legal to make. And things like wines and ciders and beers, it's completely okay and legal to make in the United States. Your country, if you're not here, check your own laws. Some of you have much more freedom when it comes to this than we do, like freedom in distilling. Next, I want to kind of drive home to you, if you'll learn my small batch method, because people say, you only make it a gallon. Yeah, but it's a time issue. In less than 30 minutes, I can make a new batch of mead or wine or cider. I can rack, which is moving from the first fermenter to the second fermenter to allow clearing out another gallon. And I can bottle a third gallon. So it's staged. So maybe week 1, you make a batch. Week 2, maybe about week 5, you're going to be ready to go ahead and go to a secondary fermenter with your first batch. So now you're going to make that batch and rack. And maybe 2 weeks after that, you're going to make a batch, rack a batch, and bottle a batch. I can do all that in 30 minutes since it's small batch in 1-gallon jugs. You can do it over your sink, in your sink. And my wife always said it's not spilling if it's in the sink. It doesn't count. It's really easy and really fast. And I do all my sanitation with hot tap water. That's it. It's all my grandfather had. They weren't dumping Clorox into their bottles or anything like that. For bottles, my favorite bottles are, I have, whenever I drink wine that's got a screw cap, and some good wines come with screw caps, folks. It's not 1980 anymore. It's not only Mad Dog 2020. It's not just Morgan David that has a cap on it. Some of the best wines out of South Africa and Australia come with a cap, and there's good reason behind it. But I won't get into that today. But if you can get people to save those for you and what have you, I just bottle straight into those and go on with life. Rinse them out with hot water, rinse the cap out with hot water, put the cap on it, throw a label on it, and gone. I know some of y'all make really fancy labels and have foil and corkers, and all. You want to do that? It's fine. It's great. My point is this can be really easy, and I want you to think about it this way. Once you get my system rolling of small batch, 1 gallon a batch, 30 minutes a week, if you're doing all three, a gallon a week is 52 gallons a year with tremendous variety, all put up and stored, long-term, aged out, great stuff. It's a cool thing to do. It just really is. I also want to real quick give you how to get a full gallon. There's a couple ways to do this. With meads, I just use 3 pounds to the gallon, and you're not going to fill your 1 gallon fermenter all the way to the top, because if you do, it's going to overflow when it ferments. So when I do a mead, I'm just using that heavy amount, 3 pounds to the gallon. When I rack to my secondary, I just go to my Berkey and get enough water to top that secondary fermenter to the top. That gives me a full gallon of mead from that batch, which is going to give me 5 750 milliliter bottles. A fifth is a 7. That's why they call it that, right? So that's going to give me 5 bottles, and I would say those bottles have to be valued at least $20 a bottle. If you bought anything equivalent from a store, that means I can produce $100 worth of meads and ciders and ciders, etc. a week. I'm not saying I'm selling them. I'm just saying that's about how much I can make only working 30 minutes a week. And a lot of the material that you can get from your backyard for no money, etc. So it's a profitable enterprise, and most people aren't going to drink anywhere near that much. I'm not even saying I make that much. I'm just saying you could. As far as some of my favorites, people have been asking about this for a long time. My favorite mead is a mead that I believe that I have created, that no one has ever made anything quite like it before. It's a methylogen, which means it's a mead that has herbs added to it, right? And it's called 3 Flowers Blend, and I use 3 different flowers in it in a sizable amount, and they are elderflower, chamomile, and heather flower. The heather flower is the most expensive one and the hardest to get, but it brings a bitterness. If you don't like IPAs, don't take this the wrong way, but 3 Flowers Blend is to mead what IPA is to ale. It really is, but it's not that kind of a thing. It doesn't taste like a pine cone. I'm not a big fan of IPAs, but it is this kind of radically different style that a lot of people that don't enjoy meads really enjoy. And I always ferment with a combination of 2 yeasts. I'll make sure that the link to find those yeasts is available here. And I go to a very dry, fully fermented, fully attenuated mead. And that's what I prefer. You can use other yeasts if you want. Next, apricot. I'm not a fan of apricots, but I'm growing apricots now because apricot mead is one of the most beautiful things that you can create. And an apricot apple cider is actually pretty delicious as well. Blackberry meads, in my opinion, can compete with really great red wines. And cucumber mint. Now, my basic formula for making small batch meads is really simple. People are like, well, how do I make the blackberry? So with the 3 Flowers Blend, that's 3/4 of a cup of the 3 Flowers Blend, and it's equal amounts of the flowers. When you do fruit, I don't care if it's cherry, blackberry, apple, whatever, I use 2 cups of fruit, chopped up, not ground up, it's just kind of chopped up if they're berries just thrown in, a pound. I use a pound of fruit to the gallon. So if I'm doing cherry mead, I use a pound of cherries to the gallon. If I'm doing apple, and I'm not using apple juice to make a true cider, I'm making an apple infused mead, I use a pound of chopped up apple to the gallon. I just throw it in the fermenter, put a little hot water on top of it to pasteurize it initially, and then I go through the rest of my process. You can watch how I do it, and it's very, very simple. And that way, I'm going to make a blank mead, but throw a pound in there to the gallon. It's really, really simple, and it gets a great infusion. Again, I have links to pretty much everything you need to know to be able to do this, and you can go listen to the 3 podcasts. They are Making Dead Simple Cider, Mead, and Fruit Wines. Small batch mead, cider, and fruit wine Q&A, where I answered all the questions that came from that. And about a year later, after that, I did another look at small batch mead, where that one I bring in a lot of the things that I've developed over the years with it. This is a great hobby. It opens up a lot of opportunity for trade and barter. I think that's going to be critical over the next decade. We do not have to we can be in the gray market without ever going fully black here, guys. There's lots of ways that you can leverage this skill set without breaking the law. And there's a lot of ways that you can break laws without going to jail, and I'll leave it to you to figure out from there. But this is a great thing to do, a great thing to get involved with. If you don't have your own bees, reach out to local apiary managers. Get your local honey. It's amazing what a difference that makes. But if you just want to give it a shot, there's nothing wrong with going down to Costco and getting some clover honey and make a batch. Give this a try. As far as speed, like I said, you can take about a month and a half. As you get better, and if you use my methods, you'll see that I can make a complete batch of mead in under 30 days. It still does well to age, but there's so many advantages to this small batch. The last one I'll give you before we leave. When you go into that secondary fermenter, you transfer over, you top it off, and it's done, but it's still got a little activity. Unlike that great big 5-gallon carboy, that 1-gallon jug goes right in the refrigerator to cold crash it. With that, it's been Jack Spirko with another episode of Miyagi Mornings. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be back tomorrow to wrap up the week.